Good afternoon, kids. Welcome to a really fun science presentation. This is Introduction to Biomes. All right, so biomes are really cool. I love biomes because when you study biomes, you get to know all about animals and plants that grow in different parts of the world. My favorite biome, for example, is the taiga. There's one called chaparral that is kind of rare. It shows up in parts of California and the Mediterranean region. Really interesting stuff. But biomes really are all about food chains and climate all put together. So let's talk about food chains and biomes with fun work that Mr. Collin has put together for us. So a food chain shows how organisms are linked together by what they consume. These food chains are part of larger food webs. And so if you note here on the card, we have a food chain here. Okay. And let's talk about biomes. Biomes are regions of the Earth which have similar characteristics and can support similar forms of life. They are often categorized by the type of plants that live there. So tundra is a biome that is so cold that only grasses and mosses can grow. Taiga is a biome that is cold but can support pine and spruce trees, coniferous trees. Steppe is a grassland biome that is moderately warm. Very interesting. So biomes. Now, this is the really fun part for me is because if we have food chains and biomes, now we're going to distinguish between the types of producers and consumers. It's just like it sounds. A producer is something that produces something, and a consumer is something that consumes what is produced. So obviously when we talk about producers, we're going to be talking about primarily plants, and we talk about consumers, we're going to be talking about animals. So here we go. A primary producer gets its energy from the sun. It does not consume another organism to survive. These organisms are called autotrophs. Plants and some algae, plankton, and bacteria make energy from the sun. This process is called photosynthesis, right? Making from light. Photosynthesis uses light, water, and carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to make sugar. Okay, very important. So primary producers. And what's an example of a primary producer? Well, here we have a coniferous tree up in a taiga area. Look at this beautiful tree. Yay. So that is a primary producer. Well, let's talk about the next step. So we covered producers. Now let's talk about two kinds of consumers. A primary consumer is an herbivore, right? From the herba, grass. That means that they eat plants for food. They need a special digestive system to digest plant material, which allows them to convert the cellulose of plants into energy. Primary consumers have a large supply of food. However, they do have to worry about being eaten by secondary consumers. So these are primarily herbivores, rabbits, squirrels, etc. And what's an example of a primary consumer? It is the Siberian roe deer. Beautiful. This biome, by the way, we're talking about is the Siberian taiga. All right, so let's talk about secondary consumers. Secondary consumers are animals that eat other animals. This means that they are either carnivores, carne Latin for flesh, omnivores, meaning both, omni. A carnivore eats only meat, and an omnivore can eat both plants and animals. A secondary consumer can also be eaten by another animal. This animal would be a tertiary or third consumer. Depending on the sequencing in the food chain, a secondary consumer could also be a tertiary consumer. Very interesting. And I've got a super awesome one here. Kids, you're going to love this. The Siberian tiger. That's right. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So right here, what I've got is the food chain card, what a biome is, a primary producer in the conifer tree, a primary consumer in the Siberian roe deer, and a secondary consumer in the Siberian tiger. Now keep that in mind because what we're going to do next is we're going to build a biome with cards as an example, and then we're going to get to the follow-up, which is pretty much going to be this. We're going to be looking to look at and research a biome, and you're going to try to find a primary producer, a primary consumer, and a secondary consumer. Why are we starting like this? Well, because ultimately we'd like to turn a food chain like this into a larger food web for the entire biome. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go ahead and put these cards away or off to the side here so that we can talk about the European deciduous forest. So, although you don't have these cards at home, you can create them. You can create them out of note cards, out of paper. Get creative. I recommend colored pencils. I recommend different colored construction paper. Kids, this is where you shine. You find ways to make this stuff beautiful, and I highly encourage you, when you study the animals and everything, to draw them, to illustrate them, to do everything in your power to make it an art project as well. Art plus science equals super fun. So, European deciduous forest, this is what we're going to be doing. Now, if you notice, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build from the base up. What does that mean? Well, the base of any biome is going to be the plants. It's going to be the primary producers, right? So let's go ahead and start with the primary producers in a European deciduous forest. So here we go. They are acorns, field grass. I'll go ahead and put that one right there. Chestnuts. And a pine cone there. Whoops, sorry. So this is our base, and in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put next to this, these are the primary producers, okay? So what eats them? Now, what we're going to notice here on the cards is that we've got, for example, in the fat dormouse here, we have at the bottom there, if you see, the fat dormouse eats all three of these things. It doesn't eat the field grass, doesn't eat this one here, but it does eat acorns, chestnut, and the conifer tree. So what we're going to do is we're going to start putting these critters here in these places, and we're going to connect them. So European red squirrel, put him here, put the moose over here, and the capercaillie, look at that cool bird. I love it. Okay. And I think that is, nope, we got one more. We got the western honeybee. So these look like our herbivores who are going to be our secondary or our primary consumers. Now, the fun thing about this at school is that we've got these strings. I've got yellow and I've got orange, right? And I don't remember exactly what Carol does, but I think I'm going to use the yellow because it kind of looks green to cut and connect to what they eat. So it looks like the fat dormouse eats the pine cone, but also the chestnut. So we're literally creating our chain here. And also the acorn. So I'm going to have to make sure I cut a big enough string here. And of course I got it all tangled up already, but that's okay. No problem. I will survive. Acorn. So if you can see there, I'm not sure if you can, but the strings are there connecting. Oh, whoops, fat dormouse, you are not being eaten by a chestnut. Fat dormouse eats the acorns, the chestnuts, and the pine cone there. Let's look at the western honeybee. It doesn't look like we have anything here, but obviously we know that it's going to feed on the nectar of plants there. But let's look at the European red squirrel, pine cone and chestnuts. Okay. Well, let's start with the hard one. And also, kids, I highly recommend you get creative at home. If you have string or yarn, I would recommend green, connecting herbivores to what they eat. I would recommend red for carnivores, but think about omnivores. Let's think about that. Squirrel eats the chestnut and the pine cone. we have it. The moose, looks like the moose eats the field grass. So we're going to connect that. Scissors aren't that sharp, but that's okay. I'll survive. And looks like the capercaillie eats the chestnuts and the field grass. So we're gonna get a nice short one here. And you may have a better way to organize when you make yours at home. And remember, the one you're going to make today or later this week is going to be much simpler. You're only going to be looking for one primary producer, one primary consumer, and one secondary consumer. All right, so it looks like I've got our base and then our primary consumers. Now let's work on our secondary consumers. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put my European bee eater here, for obvious reasons. Put my red fox kind of here, and there's a reason I'm going to sort of put the fox down a little bit here, because the fox eats the dormouse and the squirrel and the acorns. So what does that tell us about the fox? The fox is also a primary consumer because the fox is an omnivore. So I'm going to kind of put him down a little bit. Next, I'll go with the Eurasian lynx, the gray wolf, the brown bear, and the golden eagle. So now I'll start with the fox, and I'm going to have to draw a long line from the fox to the acorns, because the fox is a primary consumer in that regard. Okay. And then the fox is going to be eating the dormouse. Okay. But that I cannot do with the yellow because I'm going to use the orange. And I would recommend red if you got it, representing the carnivore. Red fox to dormouse is going to be this orange here. Oh, messed up there. And the red fox also eats the squirrel. Sorry, squirrel. Love you, squirrels, but you are prey. You are prey to the red fox. Okay. And we don't want to forget that our red fox is also eating acorns. Nice try. Getting out of order there. Okay. So, red fox looked like that was our more difficult one. But now let's move on to the European bee eater that eats the western honeybee. Okay, there we have that. Straightforward. You see our European bee eater. And just for the sake of it, look at this cute little honeybee. Look at him. Yep. Awesome. All right, so let's move over to our Eurasian lynx. Our lynx is going to eat our squirrel. Oh, the squirrel. Got a lot of stuff going on with this squirrel. Is also going to be eating, now this is why I should move him up a little bit. Also, the lynx is going to eat our fox. Ooh. Yeah, that's right. So the fox is the prey to the Eurasian lynx as well. Lynx. Don't think it's the apex or the top predator of the taiga. That would probably be the bear. But definitely that red fox is on the menu. Okay. And there's another critter here. I don't remember the name of it. Kids at home, if you find out what it is, it's that one, not the fox or the squirrel. It's the one there. I'm not entirely sure what it is. It looks kind of like a ferret or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. But I don't need to know everything. I just need you guys to Help me out. Okay, so thanks, kids. I appreciate that. All right, gray wolf eating this ferret thing. I don't want to say mongoose. I don't think that's the case. Mongoose, I don't think are anywhere near European deciduous forest. I think it's a ferret. So the gray wolf is going to eat our moose, though. We know that for sure. So let's connect it to our moose. Okay. I just saw a video the other day of a moose just randomly walking down a street. All right, good for you. All right, so moving on to the brown bear. Bears are super cool. I love bears. All right, so the bear looks like it eats the moose as well. Okay. It also eats, oh, by the way, I should show it to you. Look at our bear. It also eats the fat dormouse. Okay. Got a lot going on over here by this dormouse and this squirrel. A lot of stuff going on. All right, so there's our bear. Okay. And it also eats the field grass. So the bear is also, I'm going to put the red fox down a little bit. An omnivore means that it eats multiple things. Plants and animals, not just in one, in all. Producers and consumers. So there's our brown bear. And it looks like we have one thing left, which is our beautiful golden eagle. Okay, in our European deciduous forest. So the the golden eagle is going to eat our capercaillie next to each other, so that shouldn't be too difficult. Capercaillie. And the golden eagle also eats the fat dormouse, and also eats this other thing that I'm not sure what it is. I want you kids to figure that out for me. I think we lost a card, but that's okay. It may turn up here in some of the other ones. And nope, didn't make that one long enough. And by the way, if you guys see, I have a ton of threads. I'm probably just going to get rid of them so we can just start fresh. Okay, dormouse. The dormouse got a lot of things that are eating it. I'm not sure I would want to be the dormouse right now. So there we have it, the golden eagle. And notice we've got among our secondary consumers, we've got two omnivores here, we have some pure carnivores here, and there is our European deciduous forest. So let's talk about resources. This is something I got from Montessori for Everyone. So these are some resources that I'm going to make available to everyone. They've got all sorts of different animals. They've got them listed and ranked according to their biomes. They call them ocean, desert, forest, grasslands, rainforest, tundra, savanna, wetlands, Arctic, freshwater. Don't really like that classification as much. You can get way more specific with taiga, tundra, chaparral, alpine. But I'm going to make this resource available to you to help the kids. But let's talk about follow-up activities. So what I mentioned earlier is that I want you to choose a biome and find a primary producer, a primary consumer, and a secondary consumer, and make picture cards at home just like the ones I used today. All right, so make some picture cards at home. I highly recommend you turn it into an art project as well. Remember, you're going to have one producer, one primary consumer, and one secondary consumer. And here are the biomes you have to choose from. We're going to be doing more research into biomes, but choose one that you think is interesting to you. There are aquatic biomes, freshwater wetlands, the ocean or marine, coral reef or estuary. An estuary is where freshwater meets saltwater. There are terrestrial biomes, the tundra, the rainforest, the savanna, the taiga, the temperate forest. You could do a temperate European deciduous forest. At school we have a temperate deciduous Japanese forest as well, chaparral, desert, alpine. Alpine is where there are no trees and high altitudes like mountains, right? Alps, alpine. So those are the biomes you have to choose from. This is our introduction to biomes. We are going to be doing more work on the specific biomes. For example, deciduous forest of Japan. We've got the Pacific Ocean, Australian broadleaf forest. That's awesome. And let's see, other ones. Yeah, the Central African rainforest, super cool. The North American desert, that's another one. And, ooh, that's Cretaceous period. That's a slightly older biome. I'm not sure. So anyway, kids, I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Remember, we're not going to be doing this whole thing. I just want to give you an example. If I was to do it with this work here, with my Siberian taiga, if I pick these up, I'm so sorry, animals, I am going to move you. I'll just show you one example, just to give you a little more clarity as you move forward, because I'm not expecting this yet. This was just an example to show you how cool and interesting studying biomes is with food chains. Okay, so if I was to do this with the cards that I have here, if I was to do it with the Siberian taiga, I would put the conifer tree there, the roe deer there, and the Siberian tiger there. Okay, and I would connect the Siberian tiger to the roe deer with an orange representing the carnivore, and I would connect the roe deer to the conifer tree, just like this. So for this follow-up, you're going to end up with, it looks like, I would draw the main card, for example, Siberian taiga. Then I would draw a primary producer, make a card for that, a primary consumer, make a card for that, and a secondary consumer, make a card for that. So this is the fundamental basis of food chains and biomes. And this, for example, is the example of the Siberian taiga. So this is what your follow-up will look like. And remember, choose a biome, find the primary producer, the primary consumer, and the secondary consumer, and make picture cards at home just like the ones I used today. Hold that up one last time. So anyway, thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Science is really, really fun. Have fun with this. Do art. Make it interesting. Learning is sticky when you make it your own, when you make it fun and interesting. So thank you, kids, and enjoy building your biome.